Hello, Protein View. I assume that I'm messing up the pronunciation of your name, and I apologize. I also want to apologize because I have the most horrible cold that I've ever had in my life, and I would normally wait until my cold was over, but I wanted to make a response to your video. Either you made a mistake in your video, or you didn't make a mistake, you just didn't emphasize it, or you just didn't explain it well, but there's an important fact that seems to either be unexplained or missing from your video. The religion that is most notorious for spreading itself violently and through violence and through war is Islam itself. When Christianity first began, it spread itself through proselytization. It wasn't until 300 years later, when the Roman Empire was conquered by Constantine, who then became a Christian, that there was some kind of persuasion that was anything other than proselytization. And it wasn't really until the Holy Roman Empire, about 400 years after that, that we had proselytization that was done by conquering whole groups of people. And even then, large numbers of people who were converted were converted through persuasion and through negotiation. A king or a tribe were all at once, for instance, pulled into Christianity because a king was converted or something like that. When Europeans decided to go around conquering and spreading Christianity all over the globe, they did it in order to make money first. They simply brought the priests along in order to keep people happy at home. Their motivation was not to spread Christianity. If they wanted to spread Christianity, they wouldn't have killed all the people that they could have made into Christians and taken their land. They would have turned them all into Christians and left them alone. So turning people into Christians wasn't exactly their motivation. However, when they decided to spread Christianity by the sword all over the planet, they had a really good example, and they had a really good excuse. The example was Islam, and the excuse was Islam. When Islam was first created, it was a desert religion of a small tribe in Medina, and the reason they were in Medina is because they had been kicked out of Mecca for causing problems there. How did these roustabouts who had been thrown out of Mecca suddenly take over all of Arabia and create a state religion that everyone had to follow? They did it because Muhammad was a warlord and because Muhammad fought everyone and won, and simply said to people, you will either be Muslims or you'll die. Anyone who fought against the Muslims was killed. Someone, for instance, who wrote a poem about Muhammad that was very, very negative, Muhammad sent an assassin after her and had her killed. That was the kind of shit that was going on at that time. The rest of the Middle East was Christian and Jewish, primarily Christian. The heart of Christianity was in Anatolia, or what today is Turkey or Asia Minor, and Northern Africa, that is today Muslim, was all Christian. So you have to understand, the entire one half of the Christian world at that time was conquered by Islam, and the people were forcibly converted. You either had three choices. You either converted, you either chose to die, or you chose to live in a ghetto where you would only be allowed to worship in private. You couldn't be in a public church, and you would have to deal with neighbors that would try to beat up on you and kill you and etc., and the government wouldn't protect you. And you had this horrible tax that was put on you that would keep you in effectively in poverty forever. In other words, you had to live as a second-class citizen. In fact, you weren't even a citizen of the state. You were considered only a citizen if you converted. So you're talking about people who were either converted by the sword or at least harassed in the most incredible way in order to force conversion. As we all know, most of them converted because they really didn't have a choice. And there are very few Christians and very few Jews that were in those countries not long after they were conquered. How did they justify conquering so many places and integrating them into an empire and becoming rich off of it? Well, they were spreading the right religion, they were spreading the religion of Islam. They then took the concept of jihad, which originally meant an internal struggle, and they turned it into an external struggle, and they used it as the concept of holy war and the idea that war could be holy and it was okay to conquer people who were pagans or Christians or Jews. It was okay to conquer them because they have the wrong religion. So when Christians started doing this much later, they did it because they had an example. It had been legitimized. That's how the world works. One country legitimizes a certain moral behavior, and then it becomes legitimate for anyone to do that. Once you are in a country and let's say you overthrow the democratically elected government and you become a dictator, the problem with that is you just legitimized overthrowing a leader through violence, which means now you're going to have to be fearful of violence because you've just lowered the standard of morality for your country. You've just made it legitimate to overthrow a leader through violence, so now even though you are now the leader, you're now going to have to watching your back. Well, that works in the international stage. So it's odd that you were critical of the way we look at Islamic people who still, by the way, preach in their countries the overthrowing of other countries. They talk about conquering Europe. They talk about conquering the world. They hold up signs that say Islam will dominate the world. This isn't all Muslims, but it is a good number of them. Believe that Islam is supposed to conquer the entire world, that it is the only true religion, that it's God's religion and there's only one God and it's their God and their God is the only right God that has the right to be worshipped. It says that in the Quran. And that they are going to take over the entire world. They say it. Whether that is a legitimate interpretation of the Quran is beside the point, because this is what they think the Quran says. And when I say they, I mean radical Islamists. And I know they are a minority of the population, but there are a large number of mainstream Muslims who at least have sympathy for them. And I have seen many videos of people holding up swords saying we are going to take over Europe, we are going to rule Great Britain, we are going to rule the United States, we are going to force them not to be democratic, we're going to force them not to be liberal, we're going to make them follow Sharia law the way God wants. You can see this on YouTube and on many other video sites on the internet. You don't have to take my word for it. So let's be honest, the people who invented the idea in our world of spreading a religion by the sword, spreading the religion by conquest, the group of people who took the word holy and war and put them together for the first time in history, or at least did it for the first time and were able to act on it in some great way and create a huge empire, was the Islamic Empire, started by the predecessors, I'm sorry, not the predecessors, but the people who came after Muhammad. So let's be clear, holy war is pretty much an Islamic thing, and when the Christians came along after half their land had been taken, and the capital of Christianity, which was Constantinople, had been conquered and turned into a Islamic city, and they went into the Christian churches that had been around for hundreds of years, and they tore down all the crosses and they turned them all into mosques. You have to understand how this scared the shit out of everybody in Europe. So again, they've done it before. They tried to conquer. They got all the way into France, and Charles Martel stopped them in a fight that was just miraculous, that he was able to turn back the tide. They conquered Lower Italy, they conquered Spain, they conquered most of Eastern Europe, at least the southern part of it. So again, we have reason to be afraid of people who follow, still to this day, a philosophy that in the past has led to untold violence and conquering of other people and forcing a religious view on other people, and it has happened historically, and they talk all the time about wanting to do it again. So you know, I'm Skeptic Sage. I want to remind people that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Sorry about my cold and speaking so badly. And I know no one will believe this, but I really do wish people peace.